Hello and welcome back to another ISSA Talk. I've got Elias Arjan with me today, and he is a self-proclaimed obsessor of all things fitness. I love it.
Well, thank you, Jenny. It's great to be here, and thank you, ISSA, for inviting me once back again for two portions. So we're back for part two.
Absolutely. So you're all about, and I hear it's your personal mission to make people healthier, help prevent disease, help people perform better, and you love science. So it's kind of a natural progression into what we're talking about today, wearable technology, and specifically consumers and metrics. Are you ready to jump in?
I am ready. Take us on the path.
Absolutely. So there are, like we can see, there are a lot of fitness trackers out there. Is it really one size fits all, or do we need to consider other things when we're looking at fitness trackers and what we want to buy?
So yeah, there's a lot of different trackers, and what's even amazing is sometimes the way they even interpret the same metrics is differently. So, for example, there's some companies that do use like HRV, but rather than calling it HRV, they call it a stress score. So there's so many different ways that different companies even representing the way they do the data. I guess really it just depends on things like a couple of factors, like how do they want it to be a health monitor or just a smartwatch. We touched on that on part one, but some people don't want to wear. I mean, you're having two devices, right? One of those is a bit more of a smartwatch, one is a bit more of a health monitor. So some people may only want to do one, and so they have to kind of pick along that.
Yeah.
Some devices you can actually get away with only wearing at night. So even BioStrap, we can do a lot of our measurements just off the nocturnal data and get a lot of really cool things around insights into your sleep and recovery score. So maybe you don't want to even wear it during the day. Maybe you just want to wear your smartwatch during the day and have a health monitor at night. That's okay too. So there's a lot of different pieces to this for people to think about. And I ultimately think it's on the coaches to get a little more educated on the options, because then they can make the better recommendations to their clients.
Absolutely. And you use the word metrics. What does that mean when it relates to these devices?
Oh yeah, so that's kind of short for the biometrics, right? So a lot of people may have heard of biometrics thinking about like iris tracking or like thumbprints and stuff like that, but there's also the biometrics that come from the body. So, for example, most people are familiar with the big fitness one that everyone uses is heart rate.
Yeah.
And then even heart rate is broken down into different categories, right? Because you have active heart rate when you're working out, and then you have resting heart rate. And so we know, for example, that if you're a high endurance trained athlete, your nocturnal resting heart rate is going to be quite low because your cardiovascular system is extremely well trained. So you need less beats per minute, to be able to pump because your cardiovascular system is trained. But then when you work out, that active heart rate, often is based around age. And that's the generic technique we've been using. But now with biometric technology, we can look at those active heart rates based upon the individual resting heart rate and come up with a bio individual score of what are their heart rate zones based on that exact person rather than the generic age metrics or age categories we're using today.
Oh, is it because it collects data over time and it can kind of average it out for you as an individual?
Yeah, because you could be 50 years old, but you could have extreme endurance training, right? So a 50-year-old long distance marathoner is going to maybe their heart rate zones would be different than a sedentary 50-year-old, right? So right now, most of the training programs are putting those heart rate zones in a very specific age-related bucket. So, that's an example of what the technology is capable of doing. I don't think we've really moved there yet, but that's where we hope to see it go.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of other metrics that are advertised with a lot of these devices, like oxygen saturation. Can a device like this really measure oxygen saturation?
Yeah, it's actually challenging to get oxygen saturation on the wrist. I'll be proud of the fact that with BioStrap, we've actually been able to get clinical grade oxygen saturation on the wrist. It's not an easy thing to pull off, but we have it. So these are some of the core biometrics people might be familiar with: is heart rate, respiration rate or breaths per minute,
Yeah.
oxygen saturation or SpO2, and that's the amount of oxygen that's in the hemoglobin of the blood. During the daytime and for healthy individuals, the SpO2 is pretty much between 95 and 100 for everyone. But as I'm sure a lot of people have heard these days, there's about 30% of the population that has sleep apnea, and a lot of it's undiagnosed. So without measuring SpO2 at night, people don't even realize that that's why they sleep so poorly, is because they're not breathing properly at night and their blood oxygen saturation is dropping. And then that's why they get diagnosed with sleep apnea. That's why the snoring. That's why people even like kick, so your spouse kicks around at night. They could
Yeah.
have something where they're having breathing or respiration issues at night. And that's why you need a wearable. You can actually kind of find that information out on your own and then validate it. Maybe then you go see your doctor and get the tests.
That makes sense. Okay. So sleep apnea is a big problem, and then it leads to sleep deprivation, which can affect performance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
so so again, the other one that we didn't touch on, and this we probably can't go into in a short webinar because this is a massive rabbit hole, is the heart rate variability.
Yeah.
And I would say that last year, at BioStrap, we've been measuring SpO2 for about 4 or 5 years. Because of COVID, because it became the metric of COVID, was, people were buying the pulse oximeters for their fingers and everybody was monitoring SpO2. So a lot of wearables added that. So as of 2021, you're seeing a lot more wearables with SpO2. But HRV is still probably one of the most impactful biometrics to be monitoring. A lot of devices still don't do it. And if you're a fitness trainer, I would highly encourage you to learn about HRV and how you can incorporate that into your programs, because it gives you a lot of insights into where your clients are.
Absolutely. So for people who aren't familiar with HRV, it's the time between each individual heartbeat, right?
Yes.
In
So
milliseconds?
yeah, in milliseconds. So it's literally the beat to beat interval. So just so everyone knows, we won't go into all the details of what it is, but if you get 60 beats a minute, so you could have a smartwatch or you could have something that says your heart rate is 60 beats a minute, right? So you might think, okay, well, that's a beat a second, but it's actually not. It can be 1.2 seconds, 0.78 milliseconds, 0.84, and then there's a variation. And that variability, the amount of variability between the time signature of the beat to beats, is called the HRV, or heart rate variability score. And just so you know, if you're measuring HRV is a metric by itself, the higher the number, the better that generally is. So it really confuses people because they're used to, like, the lower your heart rate is at
Yeah,
rest, the healthier you are. But with HRV, it's the opposite. You want a higher HRV.
absolutely. It means your heart's more efficient, right?
Yeah, and what actually means that the relationship between your, and again, this is why it's a big rabbit hole, but it basically means that the relationship of your autonomic nervous system between fight or flight and rest and digest is operating very well. And so that basically is a sign of your stress or your resilience to face stress. And that's physical stress, whether you're going to the gym, but even mental stresses. So you could have, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you start screaming, your HRV plummets. So, or if you do a max load, rep, when you're going for your personal record, your HRV is going to drop because you're pushing your nervous system to the edge. And so there's this dance that's going on all the time that we're completely unaware of because it's in our autonomic nervous system.
I never thought about it like that. That's interesting. So I've also seen devices that have come out recently with an EKG.
Yeah.
So not just heart rate, right? It's an EKG. Tell us about that. Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, a lot of people might actually have been using EKGs without realizing it, because a lot of the chest straps that you use in fitness classes
Yeah.
are actually technically an EKG. So an EKG is when there's leads on the body. And, originally, like in the hospital, they do like multiple lead EKGs. But if you have 2 points of measurement, you run that signal through the body with an electrical signal and you can measure the function of the heart. So a lot of us have been using those on chest straps without realizing it. And now they're adding them to watches or little things that you hold. You have to hold with both hands and you can get the
Uh-huh.
reading, because it needs at least 2 leads. So you can't just have like a 1-point EKG. So even like on some of the devices, you'll be on the watch and then you touch the crown, and that's how it's running that
Oh.
electrical circuit.
Interesting. My mom had one that they put on her body and it
Yeah.
stuck to her. I forget where it was, but it was 2 leads that were just on her for like 3 or 4 days, and it automatically downloaded the information. Her cardiologist was able to plug it into a computer and get her EKG for several days.
Right. And that's what we were talking about in the first one, about the medical grade devices. So doctors are applying these, and a lot of times they're like bio stickers like that, and you stick them to the body, and then either they take it and then download the data. But the thing is if you go into the doctor and you get an EKG, or even if you do a spot check, you can imagine you're getting a minute of data, maybe 2 minutes of data. But in the case of your mother, they got 3 days of EKG data. That's a much larger data set to validate where her cardiovascular condition is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, because she did tell me about that the other day. That's awesome. So with all these metrics that they can collect, of course, the medical grade ones sound like they're going to be a lot more effective. How like accurate are these consumer wearables that we're seeing?
I don't want to. I don't want to knock anybody here,
Throw
but
anybody under the bus?
yeah, that's a really loaded question because there really is zero requirement for any of these wearables to be accurate. And right now, because of, especially I think because of the pandemic, there's a lot of ads where people are just flooding the market with very low price wearables. And I
Yeah,
just have to say, like anything else in life, you kind of get what you pay for. Buying the cheapest wearable on the market, probably isn't maybe the best idea. There's a lot of these being mass produced. And just if you're trying to make actual health decisions for yourself, you probably need to go with a quality brand with, again, even some clinical backing behind it, because there are wearables like us and some other companies as well that are gone through, clinical validation to make sure our metrics are accurate. So I just would encourage everyone, do a little bit of your research, do your due diligence. Don't just buy something because you saw an ad on Facebook. Go and find out, especially if you're a coach, you don't want to be making coaching decisions for your clients based upon the cheapest wearable that's out there or
on
some
bad
mass
data.
produced, no name product.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I actually have an issue with that. Like, so a lot of people don't know that these devices have those little lights underneath them,
Yeah.
right? And in our recovery course, you talk about it in your chapter about the different colors of light and how they penetrate skin. But I
Yes.
also have darker skin than, say,
Yes.
you do or my friend might have. So it doesn't penetrate as well. And actually, my biggest complaint with this watch, I love the watch. It's a great watch, but I don't usually use it for tracking my workouts. I use my other device because I noticed I did intervals, heavies, like an hour of intervals on an air bike and legs with my friend. My heart rate was up. I was sweating like crazy this morning. It said I burned the same amount of calories as I did the day before doing a lower intensity upper body workout. Every workout at 30 minutes, I'm at 182 calories. At a minute or at an hour, I'm at 364. And I noticed it because I was like, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a dirty secret as well that the wearable technology industry probably doesn't want people to know, that there is a real correlation between the quality of the data, depending if they're using sort of a green light sensor like that watch for you, and then the darker the skin, tattoos, low oxygen perfusion. I don't have darker skin, but I'm hairy, so like it depends on these different things in terms of how good the quality of those metrics are. That's why at BioStrap we use the red light sensor, because the red light
Ah,
sensor is more accurate, but it's
mhm.
motion intolerant. So then we need to add in a green light PPG sensor for active heart rate. So there's a lot of different things that are going on here. That's again why we tried to cover this as comprehensively as possible in that wearable chapter and the recovery certification, so you can see some of the devices that are out there. And a lot of people don't even realize there's devices you can wear on your head. There's devices you can wear on your belt clip, and they're pulling data from that. So there's a lot of different ways to get this information. And it's still an evolving space. So we're going to just keep getting better. I mean, remember how bad those first laptops were for anybody who was
Yeah,
around, or, maybe you remember when you were a kid, I'm older than you, but they really sucked. I mean, they were horrible. They were crashing all the time. And
yeah.
so wearable technology is still in its relatively early stages. So, all of this is going to get figured out eventually. Technology goes through its own phases of growth and development.
Absolutely. So for those of you guys watching, I definitely recommend doing your research on wearable technology because, like Elias said, there's a lot of them out there. I'm a strength coach for college level athletes, and my volleyball players have trackers that they wear on their ankles. A lot of NCAA teams use them, and I'm
Right.
sure you've heard of these where it tracks their jump, the
Yeah.
force that they put when they land, and after a certain number of jumps or a certain amount of force on their knees, their trainers will pull them out of practice so they don't injure themselves because they're practicing 5 days a week.
Yeah, and that's a perfect moment for us to talk about one other thing, that if you're a coach, that this is what wearable technology potentially, and that's why I think it was good that we even include it in the recovery certification, is because this idea that every workout you go as hard as you can is not really where the science is. And that's where wearables come in, because you could have a wearable technology like, I'll just use BioStrap for us as an example. We have a recovery score out of 100. So if your recovery score that day is 25, that's not the day to go do high intensity interval training, max cardio effort, try to set a personal record. Your nervous system is not ready for that. That's when you
Yeah,
do like active recovery, foam rolling, low intensity cardio if you want to do it. Like, you can make decisions based upon that data that are going to really improve the performance of that athlete or just even your fitness enthusiast.
absolutely. That's a great point. So it just comes down to, like we've talked about before, using the data. If you use the data, it will help you. You have to use it as often as you can to look at it. But if you don't use it, then it's not going to help you.
And
But that brings me, oh, go ahead.
well, I'm just gonna say Olympians have been using this for a long time, and so have been professional athletes. I mean, for any of you know, I mean, one of the biggest proponents of recovery that is, in professional sports today is LeBron James. I mean, he really designs a lot of active recovery protocols, designing his training days and off days very, much according to data. A lot of Olympians and athletes have been doing this. And, a lot of athletes that we've even worked with, when you tell them you need to take a day off, like, that's just not in their mindset, right? They're a
Right.
professional athlete, they train every day. But what they're finding is these professional athletes, when they take that recovery day or do a lower intensity training, their performance actually goes up. So
Yeah.
there's a trade-off there that people need to understand. It's in professional athletics, and now with wearable technology, we can apply it to everyone.
Absolutely. So that brings me to a super important question, though, for all of us trainers out there who have, a large client base. Are these pieces of technology going to replace us eventually?
I truly do not believe that's the case. I would say that there are some companies that might try to do that, that will try to create AI, to some degree. But, if you look at behavioral change, and we mentioned this in the first session, but, as a fitness coach, what are you really in the business of? You're in the business of behavioral change. And people change behavior when they're inspired by other people. And I don't think, your smartphone is going to inspire you the way a professional fitness trainer will. That's my personal, very strong belief. I think these become an excellent tool for all the coaches listening. And you bring this into your practice, you bring this to your clients, and you become the thought leader expert on this, and your clients will be even more dedicated because they will understand that they need you now in a way, that makes you very much a part of their life and part of their success.
Absolutely. You're speaking the truth, but I'm sure all the people out there with their smartphones next to them, their Siri is going crazy right now. Mine has Bixby. It's the same thing.
Right.
Crazy. It's always listening, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I don't think AI, I know AI is the buzzword and we work with it as a company, and yes, machine learning AI is a legitimate thing, but again, I think that as human beings we need each other. I think a lot of us learned that in quarantine, last year. We need socialization, we need each other. And I think there might even be a blowback when we go too deep into the technology. There might be a pendulum swing back where people are just like, I want to be with other humans. I want humans to coach me. I want humans to support me and inspire me, because, the smartphone just isn't cutting it.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you about your BioStrap. So
Sure.
if I had several clients on a BioStrap and I was able to look in on their data, because you said I can look in on their data, right?
Yeah.
So would I look at the same information or the same reports or the same metrics for each person, or would I personalize it for them?
You would probably look at all of the metrics that you would have, but then the personalization comes in, and this is where the thought leadership comes in, is you would need to look at them as individuals. So you look at the bio individual and you would say, okay, well, like, this person's a really good sleeper. So I don't need to talk too much about their sleep hygiene or their sleep patterns, because they're sleeping well. There's, all of their scores around sleep are excellent, but, maybe their resting heart rate is probably a little high for where I think they should be. So we're going to focus more on the metrics that need to be moved. Whereas somebody else, you might be the opposite. They train really hard, but they're just not getting enough sleep, or they're stressed all the time. And this is where I think it's going to become an interesting thing for fitness trainers, because right now you're probably not talking to them about sleep. You're not talking to them about stress, maybe in the way that we need to start going. And that's
Yeah.
because you don't have insights into that. Maybe some
Mhm.
coaches do, But when you start having insights into people's sleep, because one of the things people don't even think about, I'll give you a quick realistic example. If your cortisol levels are high, you can go to the gym all the time and you don't lose the belly fat. And then you're blaming your trainer, I'm not losing this belly fat. Why? Well, because your cortisol levels are too high because you're never recovering. You're not sleeping. When you go to work out, your body says, oh, geez, there's more stress in the world. I better
Yeah.
put on more fat, right?
Yep.
How do we know how to solve that? Well, the wearable technology can give us those insights.
That's super cool. It takes you from that subjective data that I feel to the objective data. This is what we know, and we can repeat it.
You're speaking my scientific language now. We're all about that.
I
Objective
love
versus
that. You and I
subjective.
can talk forever.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, people, I again, this is something else that trainers probably already know, but people are really bad at self-reporting. So when somebody says, like, how do you feel today? And they be like, I feel great. I can go 100%. That might not even be close to the truth, right? They're saying that to their trainer. But if you have their data, I can be like, look, your recovery score on the BioStrap is 20 today. You're not at 100%. You're at 20%. That's the reality. So, and then you design the program around that.
Oh, it goes the other way too. People could be like, "Oh, I don't feel good," and you look
Yeah.
and you're like, "You're fully recovered. Get out of here. Let's
Yeah.
go."
Yeah, you could, and that's great though, because that's what you're also there to do as the coach, right? Is to maybe
Yeah,
push them to
push
the
'em.
edge when they're like, yeah, they're feeling lazy that day. And again, that all comes into things like personality and all of these different things. And this is why I think AI isn't going to do it, right? Because you need that person who's going to kind of feel you out and know what is it that gets you, pumped and going.
That's awesome. So cool. Thank you so much again for your insights, Elias. You're phenomenal.
Oh, well, Jenny, it's just great. And it's great when you have somebody who's excited about this like yourself. So we could go all day, I'm sure.
I know. I think you and I are in a tie for who loves fitness and science the most because we're both up there.
All right.
That's
Well,
awesome.
well, thank you so much for having me. And I really want to congratulate, ISSA for taking some leadership on, educating the fitness trainers on wearable technology. I'm dedicated to this. And I really think that, this is an important thing for all the trainers to get on board with. Now's a great time. Jump on in.
Absolutely. While it's still young, grow into it.
Exactly.
Very nice. Well, thank you again. And thank you guys for watching. You will be hearing from this guy again soon. We're going to bring him back for some more talks with us. Specifically, I want to learn more about heart rate variability. So I am super excited to talk to you more, Elias. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, everyone.